In a division as stacked as the UFC's middleweight division, none might be more competitive as what we're going to witness on Saturday night here in Las Vegas. Now, I am Jose Youngs at MMA Fighting. Join me is a man you are all familiar with.
Look at this.
Sean Al-Shadi of The Athletic. Sean.
My man.
Before we kick in, how you been?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to be back here. Let's see if I remember how to do this.
You know, this is a camera, by the way.
Yeah, I haven't seen one of these in a bit.
Right. Well, we are gonna talk about fist fighting. UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya is putting his title on the line against a man he called out, Yoel Romero, a man who's, I believe, 1-2 in his last few fights.
1-3.
1-3 in his last few fights. Lost his last fight, but we don't see many fans complaining about this matchup, right?
Did you just see their stare down?
I was going to get to that. I was trying to build up to that, but yeah, their stare down was pretty horrifying. I mean, we looked at each other after. I'm like, man, imagine staring Yoel Romero in the face. Like, all week he seemed to be kind of on another level in terms of
He's
intensity.
having an all-time terrifying
Yes, 100%. I mean, you saw him at media day when people asked him questions. He would look at him square in the face and growl. I've watched that clip of him saying, just go, like 100 times. It was...
Poor Phil Murphy. You can hear him gulping.
Poor Oscar Rose, poor Phil Murphy, but it's been one of those weeks for Yoel Romero, and it's kind of culminated into that stare down where even Israel Adesanya, the champion, looks like, what are we doing here? Like, what is happening? And I'm
Yoel's like kind of like mimicking his motions.
I know. I'm like, God, Dana White's gonna break this up, and then it kept going and going. I'm like, this rules, but I'm horrified right now. So, but as I said, no one's really complaining about this matchup. Like, similar to the Jose Aldo situation where fans might be bothered that he's fighting Henry Cejudo, no one's really complaining about Yoel Romero getting this title shot.
See, the Cejudo thing is different though, right? Because that division, Cejudo's screwing over a lot of people. Yoel Romero's not screwing over anybody. Paulo Costa's going to come back. He's going to get the fight. Darren Till's not ready. Cannonier's hurt. And also, this week, if you're not excited for this fight, you just don't like fighting.
Sure.
This is an all-time heat check by Israel Adesanya. Like, he did not need to do this, and that's what the most fascinating part of this to me is, because this guy's on a rocket ship right now. The way he handled Robert Whittaker, I just went back and rewatched that fight this week.
I describe it as a perfect game in baseball.
It's an unbelievable, example of someone just being in a flow state the entire fight. He could have ridden that momentum, and most guys would have just ridden that momentum, waited for Paulo Costa to get healthy, rest on his laurels, enjoy his time. Dude literally called out the scariest human being that I've ever seen in my entire life. And be like, yeah, let's do that. That seems fun. There's no reason he needed to do that. And the fact that he is doing it is everything, right?
It's refreshing to me.
Because you look back at the all-time great MMA heat checks. It's like Conor McGregor agreeing to fight Chad Mendes on short notice, or Nate Diaz doing the same thing. You got Anderson Silva going up to light heavyweight when he didn't really need to. That's how legends are made. Like, that is that's like myth making in this sport. And what Izzy is doing, if he's able to go through this year that he's sort of constructed for himself with Paulo Costa, Romero, and probably Cannonier at the end, that's a legendary.
Well, that was going to be my next question. If he does pull up, before I ask you for your prediction, but if he does pull off this win, all week we're talking about, is Israel Adesanya a star? Is he the first post-Reebok era star? And he looked like a star against Robert Whittaker. That was in Australia, where he's from. It was in a massive arena.
I'll jump in and I would say Jorge Masvidal is probably that person.
Well, I guess that's fair, but I'm saying he was in the UFC really before the Reebok era. So I'm saying, he debuted post-Reebok.
Sure, okay.
And he could be the first true crossover superstar that only fought in the Reebok era. If he pulls off this victory, it's safe to say he's one of, if not the big. It's hard to say he's bigger than Conor McGregor right now, but he has to be in that conversation, right?
Well, I think Conor's in his own conversation.
Sure.
It's Conor, and then it's Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal, those guys. Khabib probably in there too. But man, I mean, this is how you become, like I just said, a legend, right? This is what fans love. This is what just anybody who loves MMA to really just go all in and pull your balls out and just put it on the table like that, like Izzy is doing, which is what he's doing. You saw Yoel Romero, what we just saw, man. That dude stares through your soul, and he, a 42-year-old man, looking at you like that, can you imagine going to sleep tonight in Las Vegas knowing that you would have to fight that human being tomorrow?
There's a Cuban boogeyman walking about? No, I can't imagine that.
It's unbelievable.
Now, speaking of Yoel Romero, though, similar to last week, the talk of Joseph Benavidez getting that title shot was he's always come up just short. we don't really hear that conversation much with Yoel Romero. He's kind of in a similar situation where he's been in a few title fights and not pulled out. Is this it for Yoel Romero if he doesn't pull it out against Israel Adesanya? He said he wanted to fight till he's 51.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if anyone can do it, it's going to be him because he's, as you said, he's not even a human. So if he doesn't pull it off against Israel Adesanya, this isn't for the interim title like he's fought for in the past. Is this the last hurrah for Yoel Romero?
Well, it's funny, right? Because before the last fight for Yoel, when he fought Paulo Costa, on our show on The Athletic, Man in the Myth, with Chuck Mendenhall, we were talking about, is this kind of the last hurrah? Like, is Yoel Romero sort of at the end of his rope? He's 42 years old. Like, there's no way this can continue to go. He looked incredible in that fight. Yeah. He looks insane this week. He wants to fight another 10 years. Like, I'm not going to tell that dude no. Like, at this point, we're long past the point where this is making no sense. So, like, I guess let's just ride it, right? Like, if this dude wants to do another 5 years, I'm not going to doubt him at this point.
So, putting you on the spot, who leaves with the gold Saturday night?
Man, I really want to say Yoel because of how intense he has been all week. But it just feels like I've been in this game probably about 10 years at this point. It's rare you get around people who have sort of the feeling that Izzy has. Like, he really does feel like someone who we will remember as a star, a legend, someone who did some really great things. The way that he was sort of able to construct this run, and it's less than 2 years, right? Like, he debuted, what, February last year?
On the same card that Yoel Romero fought Luke Rockhold.
The speed with which he's doing this, I just have to go with Izzy. I'm a fully believer in this point in him, and this is his hardest test. This is probably his hardest stylistic test in the division.
100%.
And the fact that he wants it, City Kickboxing is just on fire right now. That gym is unbelievable with Eugene Behrman and all the guys over there, Ash Belcastro and all those guys. I believe in him. I'm picking Izzy. 4th round KO.
I don't know if it'll be a knockout. But I agree with you. I think Israel Adesanya will win. I spoke with him. I had that sit down with both Eugene and Israel, and they were describing spider training, as they described it, where basically Eugene puts Israel Adesanya and everyone in the gym through hell solely based on who they're fighting. They go, worst case scenario, Yoel Romero does all of these things, and that's what we're working on today. So Eugene Berman constructs this hellacious day solely on Yoel Romero putting Israel Adesanya through a wood chipper, and Israel Adesanya is like, I've survived that every single week. I think I can survive against this. Not even think. He knows he can survive against Saturday. I wasn't the biggest believer in the rise of Conor. I always thought, like, oh, if he fights this wrestler, this will happen. I don't feel that with Izzy. I think I'm fully on board with what he's saying. He blew me away against Brunson. He blew me away against... I thought Kelvin was going to give him a lot of problems. He did.
We did, yeah.
But that 5th round, when he just pulled out, he walked out, and when I was speaking with him, he goes, I was ready to die in that 5th round. Like, if I died in that 5th round, so be it. And I was like, good God, man. Like, well, against your arm, you might die. You might die kicking. So I got to go. I agree with you, Izzy.
One other thing I want to throw in before we move on. The way that Izzy looks at the game is so fascinating to me.
It's unbelievable.
Because I've never met a fighter who thinks about things in the way that he thinks about them and breaks them down in the way that he breaks them down. I spent some time with him over the course of this week and really just kind of like delved into that with him of just like, what is it like in there for you, like that when you hit that state, that flow state? Like, what are you seeing? What are you experiencing? And really, like, is that something that you can hone? Is that something that you can practice and sort of summon at will? He has so many little rituals that all the guys at City Kickboxing say that just the way he thinks about himself, he sort of looks internal, he internalizes a lot, he sees a psychiatrist, he talks about things that we don't really hear fighters talking about with masculinity and just all this other stuff. He thinks about the game in a very different way, and it's, I keep saying the word fascinating, but it really is fascinating.
I asked him this, like specifically, it's like, not only do, like, you've learned a lot from watching fighters and what works inside the octagon, but he's like, I grew up watching embedded, so I know what fans will gravitate, I know what to say and what not to say, so it feels like he took, like, media training, but he clearly didn't. He just watched and learned. He's a huge fan, but he watched and learned and analyzed, and now that he's here, I feel like he's been here for a long time. Like, he came in ready for this. Like, he's been here for a while, and like you said, it's only been a handful of years, and he's already the champion. And I do think he wins Saturday. I don't want to say he's going to have this long undefeated run, because I'm not ready to say that, but I do believe he wins on Saturday.
Well, it's a hellacious stretch he has in front of him.
He has to fight the scariest human being, like you said. But we're going to drop down to the co-main event. Strawweight champion Zhang Wiley is making her first title defense defense against former champion Joanna and Jacek. I really think the main event took a lot of the spotlight from this, but after media day yesterday, the stare down, a lot of the talk amongst us media was Joanna, like kind of looking at Wiley and saying like, you're not ready, like this and that, like you say you're gonna knock me out, and then Zhang Wiley's just like, shut up already. So I really think I loved this fight in terms of like an actual like stylistic, a high level martial arts fight, but I am far more hyped for this fight after media day.
Yeah, when I was coming into this week, I was excited for this fight, but I don't know that I would say like I was thoroughly pumped about it, you know? I'm really excited for this fight. They have sold this fight so well this week. Wiley Zhang's English is one of the biggest revelations for me this week. She is like basically learned all of this in 2 months, more or less. Like that's kind of the time frame that she's been trying to learn. It's unbelievable how good her English is already. That's going to help her so much in this game. And we saw it on Wednesday at Open Workouts. Watching her hit pads.
It's like a shotgun.
It is so different than I'm going to be honest, I didn't see this coming. Her first 3 UFC fights were really kind of just like they came and went for me. Like I didn't really identify anything in those fights. It was like, oh, okay, this is someone who might be a long reigning champion.
It's like I was looking at her record and I was like, oh, she was on 227. I forgot about that. Like
exactly. They were forgettable. Yeah. They were forgettable fights. And then all of a sudden she's just this monster coming in and beating Jessica Andrade, and now how we look at her. It's wild. I can't really think of a comparison for that sort of rise where 3 fights in, nobody really knew who she was, and then all of a sudden she's this champion. She's might be a star. I mean,
she has Tom Brady talking about her.
Tom Brady loves her.
Tom Brady she flew into Boston and was like offered to go to like a Patriots game, and then she was the only guest fighter on the UFC Boston ESPN card. Like she has like politicians like campaigning to get her into the country and stuff, so she could be an absolute star.
What you just said too, that is one factor that sort of worries me. Maybe not worries me, but it's going to be interesting to me to see how she handles it, because her road to UFC 248 is not an easy road.
That's an
In fact, it sounds hellacious. I was talking to her manager, Brian Butler-Ow, and he said that more or less, like, I don't know of any other fighter who would have stayed in this fight dealing with what she was dealing with. I mean, 5 weeks ago, she has to leave China. She goes to Thailand. She's able to stay in Thailand for like a few days, and just enough to like get settled. And then she has to go to Abu Dhabi. He's telling me that her team is sending him videos of her basically doing strength and conditioning drills in her hotel on like a bed mattress in Abu Dhabi, just because they didn't have anywhere to work. And yet she stayed in this, and she's now here, and she seems very prepared.
It doesn't seem like the pressure got to her at all.
No.
Like if you didn't know her story, she seems like a seasoned vet at this point. Like she tells Joanna to shut up, and then like you look at her Instagram and she's like in the back like laughing. Like she understood what Joanna said.
She's very confident.
She's very confident. Joanna seemed to take issue with saying she's gonna knock her out, but Joanna also said the problem with facing Michelle Waterson is, as it goes, I liked Michelle Waterson. Like I need this back and forth with my opponents like she had with Claudia and Andrade.
And that's another thing. She didn't have that with Rose either, right?
Nope.
Or Valentina, really.
Or Valentina.
The meanness brings the best out of Joanna. We have seen this before.
You're not wrong. So, putting you on the spot, do we see Ann Stiller and New in that co-main event?
Man, so I want to be consistent, because I picked on Wednesday, I picked Joanna.
Okay.
And then I got here. And within 2 hours of being here, I was like, well, I probably am wrong. Just seeing Wiley at Open Workouts really kind of changed my mind. I want to pick Wiley Zhang, but I'm going to be consistent. I'll say Joanna by decision. But man, she's got a tough task ahead of her.
I'll just pick opposite you. I'm making my mind up right now. I'm just picking Zhang Wiley solely because Sean picked Joanna. I just want to be different because I don't want to agree on everything. I don't know if she knocks Joanna out. I think there are clearly questions about can Zhang Wiley go 5 rounds. She has not been.
That's the thing. Like, that's the thought, right? If she's going to win, it's going to be first round, second round, that sort of thing.
And for all we know, she could have an unbelievable gas tank. Like we saw Izzy, like he went 5 rounds with Brad Tavares, but then the conversation was like, oh, wait till he gets in a war. And then we see him get in a war with Kelvin, and now he's on legendary status. So for all we know, Zhang Wiley could go 5 rounds. Like Jai Junior Rosenstreich, same thing. What if he doesn't get a 9-second knockout? He goes 4 rounds in 4 minutes with Overeem and then knocks him out. So we could see something. For all we know, she could have an unbelievable cardio tank. We don't know. But I'm going to pick Zhang Wiley solely to just be different from my man Sean right here. But dropping down there, we were talking before we got on, there are a lot of maybe not fights with title implications, but a lot of really fascinating fights on the main and prelim card.
Yeah.
So is there any other fights you really want to spotlight?
A lot of really competitive matchups.
Super competitive.
Like if you look at sort of the betting lines up and down this card, it's a lot of close to pick'ems, more or less. Like it's a lot of fights that are really hard to determine. The last 3 fights on the main card are all sort of in that space. The one I'm the most excited for in that main card, though, other than the 2 title fights, is Li Jinglong versus Neil Magny. We get the returning Neil Magny. Li Jinglong has to be on the quietest, loudest 7-1 run I've ever seen in the UFC. He's 7-1 over his last 8. He's won bonuses in 5 of his last 6. He's knocking dudes out left and right, and no one knows who he is. If I had just given you his resume without telling you his name and giving you 100 chances to guess who this person was, there's no way you would have ever guessed it. And yet he's had to go through sort of a same path as Wiley Zhang, leaving China, going to Thailand to train for this because of coronavirus. That fight is fascinating to me, and also one other is the return of the Sugar Show.
Sean O'Malley.
Sean O'Malley.
Arizona boy. As you know, he's coming off this 2-year USADA turmoil where it's back and forth. I spoke with him, and he said learning that he had been flagged for a USADA violation was a shot in the heart, and the thoughts that went through his mind were like, do I have to move out of the state?
Yeah.
Do I have to like cut people out of my life? Like, are people coming in?
They were paranoid about somebody sabotaging.
To say paranoid would be an understatement. Like, he was like, I'm just gonna move and like just cut everyone out of my life because I don't know if people are putting stuff in my drink or not. He seems like, I don't want to say he's over it because I don't know if you can ever move on from losing 2 years of your career, but he seems like those 2 years I healed up, I got better at my own craft. He put on apparently 10 pounds of muscle to prepare for this fight. So, and to say he's confident would, again, like he oozes confidence wherever he goes.
Well, also there's a sense of almost, I don't know how to phrase it, but like karmic reimbursement with him, because when I think of Sean O'Malley going into this week, I assumed like, oh, he has like 3 fights, 4 fights, something like that. No, he has 2 UFC fights.
Neither opponent is in the UFC anymore.
Neither opponent he's basically starting anew. But when he's going through all of this USADA stuff, he had to basically pay for a lawyer for 2 years. And then he had to pay $1,000 per supplement to test 20 different supplements. He ended up spending so much damn money that he hasn't earned yet. That dude was on an entry-level UFC contract when all of this started happening. He's so behind the 8 ball of where we thought he was going to be. The way USADA puts these fighters through, making pay for all this is just disgusting, frankly. But this is his time now, man. Like him and Tim Welch, his coach Tim Welch, feel like almost it was better that this happened in some way, because he was going to get so much stardom, so much fame, some money very early on in his career. He was 23 years old when all of this started happening. It seems like he's gone through a lot of personal evolution, a lot of personal growth. He's 25 now. He seems to have really also upped his jiu-jitsu game, upped his strength. Like you said, he's gained some size. I think we're going to see a very impressive performance.
Yeah, I mean, he's even doing like in his off time outside of streaming, he's doing like the Quintet competition. So he's
great. He's sub-Takanori Gomi.
He's sub-Takanori Gomi, and then got leg locked for whatever reason against Lombard, even though it was against the rules. But I agree.
Also,
like,
Hector Lombard's a giant man.
He is. He also didn't play by the rules. That's another conversation. But Sugar Sean O'Malley, I think outside of the top 2 fights, has drummed up the most interest. Like, he's on the Embedded series, The Anatomy of a Fighter. He's with the Raptors guys. Like, he's doing all these, like, the camera's not been off of him since he got to Las Vegas.
Well, it's odd to me because it doesn't feel like he's lost very much momentum.
No, not at all.
Even though he's been out so long, like, you can lose momentum in 2 weeks in this sport. People forget about you, but it seems like people are still really into Sean O'Malley, even though we haven't seen him a long time.
He's done a phenomenal. I overheard him talking to some other people during media day. He goes, what he was doing in his offseason, like with his gaming, with like his YouTube channel, like he made sure he made sure people didn't forget who he was, but he thinks people forgot how good he is. Like, now people look at me and he's like, I'm just like the gamer with like face tattoos and stuff, but like, I'm gonna go in there and destroy this man, and then people will remember, like Jose Quinones, we haven't even talked about. I'm gonna destroy Jose Quinones, and then I'm not gonna be just this goofy-looking gamer. I'm gonna be a legitimate bantamweight. So I assume you think Sugar Sean's gonna win after all this.
Yeah, and also you mentioned the face tattoos. He got a new face tattoo.
Oh, I am very
week.
aware. He got, because at UFC 222 that was a fake face tattoo. He goes, I'm dumb enough to get a face tattoo, but I'm smart enough to test it to see if it looks dumb. I'm like, well, you have to be a fighter for the rest of your life for a gamer, because you're not going to get another job with that. But
I just like the idea of getting a face tattoo on fight week. That's ballsy enough.
Oh, I mean, come on. I mean, Yeah, so I agree. I think we're both in agreement. Sugar Sean pulls this out. Is there any other fights on this card? I mean, you talked about Li Jingliang, and I've had the same. I had like this flashback to us standing in front of the arena in Arizona. You said like the same thing about Vicente Luque before. It was like 7-1, all bonuses. No one's talking about it. It just creeped up. So
I called that shot.
You did. You called that shot. So I can't disagree with you. But there's a lot of other fights on this card. I'm really excited for the Jakar Close, Beneil Dariush fights that was rebooked. Jakar Close hasn't really had a finish in the UFC. He's only had one loss. I've been following his vlog a lot that he's not putting on his YouTube channel. He says he's been going to a psychiatrist a lot more to like to figure out like how he said there was like a mental block and he wanted to get through that. So dealing with the sports psychologist has really benefited him and Courtney Casey, his girlfriend. So I'm very fascinated about that fight.
Now that you mentioned the fight, I want to add one thing.
Yeah.
He's fighting Beneil Dariush.
Yeah.
Beneil Dariush is really interesting to me because he's now on year 6 of sort of his experience in the UFC, and we still don't know where he is. Like he came into the UFC, had that great 5-fight run, and if you look at that 5-fight run, 4 of his best wins are on that run. And he's just sort of struggled since then. So he's trying to get his way back into the rankings. I'm interested to see where
he said he was finally healthy. So he's like, this is like, when I was I didn't get it on camera, but like we were just kind of chatting in media. He goes, this is the first fight I can honestly say, like I feel good. Like I can go in here and I can get the job done. And like, so he goes, this is really the fight that people are going to really know the real Beneil. He's also married, so it's like a new lease on life kind of stuff. But absolutely phenomenal card. Bummer that Emily Whitmire missed weight at 117.5 pounds. But Mark Matson's on this card we haven't talked about. I am so excited for the Duran Win fight. Like that fight basically got made on Twitter where they were just talking a bunch of greasiness to each other through social media. Then they get face to face and then they start talking greasiness again. So I'm like, I'm
really
glad
like the use of greasiness.
Hey man, you can bring it on with the Athletic if you want. But I'm really glad that this fight wasn't just manufactured to build the fight. That there's like legitimate kind of tension between those guys. I'm very excited for that middleweight fight. But any other things you want to spotlight on this?
Literally just named most of them.
But we're gonna wrap this up. You can find all of our stuff here on the MMA Fighting YouTube channel, the media day, the weigh-ins. We didn't even talk about Tony Ferguson and Habib, our sit down with Izzy. You can find his stuff on the Athletic. It's a phenomenal website. He pumps out like what 3,000, 4,000 words in your sleep on these things. So go read stay on our YouTube page, and when you finish there, then you can go read his stuff. But for Jose, that's Sean. We're out.